Hello and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is Monday, April 12th, 2020, and this is episode 13A. Today, as it is a Monday episode, I will be discussing this week's new comic book pull list, which won't necessarily have the spotlights that I normally do, but it will have just a lot of really good comics. I know I think it is 3 DC comics, 7 Marvel comics, and 7 comics from various quote-unquote indie publishers. So it's a really good variety, and it's a lot of things that I'm very excited to talk about. So we'll go through all that, and after that, we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 4, which was a big episode for a lot of reasons, and we will go over all of that in due time. And then we have Warner Brothers' new problem as I see it, which we will kind of discuss what they've gotten themselves stuck into now. And then finally, Extreme Carnage. We'll talk about this mini event that Marvel has announced starting in July that I am really excited for, and I will kind of go into that in depth, what is going on there. So let's go ahead and get started with everything. For the new comic book pull list, of course, I will be doing the corresponding pick list on Friday's episode 13B, and at that point I will be covering what actually I thought about the comic books that are on my pull list, which I will be discussing coming up now. So let's go ahead and get into that. Like I said, it is 3 DC comics, 7 Marvel comics, and 7 indie comics, of all things of varying degrees of excitement that varying amounts of things that I have to say about it. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. I'll quit this rambling and we'll just go ahead and do that now, before we get into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I kind of feel like is probably the thing that people want to hear more, so we'll get there when we get there, but we'll start with the comics. But if you are here for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, just real quickly, and you don't want to listen to the comics talk, go ahead and jump to the 48-minute mark. I will be starting talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 4 somewhere within the minute after that 48-minute mark. But anyway, let's go ahead and actually get into the comics now. And these are going to be just in chronological order. We're starting with number 1s and ending with Wonder Woman 771. So that's it's going to be not in any order of preference, it's in order of what number issue they are in their own series. So, starting off here with Batman the Detective number 1. This is a Tom Taylor and Andy Kubert story. Tom Taylor is a mainly DC writer. I don't know if he's strictly DC, but he's a mainly DC writer who he does a lot of really good alt-world stuff. So I know he did a lot of, if not all, of the Injustice comics that were based off the game, and honestly were so much better than the game. If you haven't read the Injustice comics, I definitely recommend that. That was a lot of Tom Taylor. And Tom Taylor also did the recent Deceased series, which has actually been a number of series. I think it was 2 6 or 7 issue series, and then one shot, or possibly it was 1 3 issue. I don't honestly remember. And I think it was one shot on top of that, if I'm correct there. But really, really interesting stuff. Deceased is basically the Marvel zombie story of the DC universe. And Tom Taylor just did a phenomenal job with that. So having him here on this this European adventure, as far as I can tell, this is not British Batman or anything like that. It's Batman from Gotham City who's just going to England to investigate, and he's going to have a whole new landscape, a whole new set of villains and things. It looks like the villain is going to be known as Equilibrium, so will be really interesting in seeing how Tom Taylor, I don't think he's British, correct me if I'm wrong, I honestly don't know for sure, but it'll be really interesting seeing his take on not quite an alternate universe Batman, but a Batman in a completely different setting. My husband spent some time in England as a teen, I guess, so it'll be interesting to see what he thinks of that, if there's any thoughts that he has on that. So really excited. Batman the Detective is what it's called. I'm not sure how many issues it's gonna be. I guess this is it. Is it 1 issue? I think it was gonna be more than, okay, one of six, but they just don't have any solicitations for the other issues out yet for some reason. I guess this is only gonna come out every couple of months. That's fine. If this ends up being really good, I will definitely be fine with sticking through it with a several month wait. We approve that that's something that, we as readers are willing to do, so they're probably gonna do that. Next up, we have Spider-Man, Spider's Shadow #1, which is an alt-reality story, but it's over at Marvel for Spider-Man, written by Chip Zdarsky, art by Pascal Ferry, colors by Matt Hollingsworth, who is a big popular colorist in the industry right now. Chip Zdarsky, I always mention, is one of my favorite writers in the modern era. Pretty much everything that he writes, I'm really cool with. I really enjoy it. He also does art, mainly on the Sex Criminals series that ended last year, or possibly, yeah, it was last year. So really, really cool guy. He's not... I thought of him for a long time as a comedy writer. That was really stupid of me to think that. He is very funny, yes, that is true. But it's not that he's a comedy writer, it's that he just captures the I guess you could say the human experience very well. You know how people always say that comedians are the ones who actually have the darkest lives or whatever it is. You could kind of see that with Chip Zdarsky and his writing, how he's a very funny guy who writes this very touching stuff. So Spider-Man, Spider's Shadow #1, the series is going to be following the alt-reality where Peter Parker does not does not give up, I suppose, the black Spider-Man suit as it kind of was when he wore it, and he becomes Venom. I'm not entirely sure if this is going to be picking up several years on, or just kind of continuing from where he goes, you know what, I'm just going to keep this, or whatever it is that they have him do. But it's going to be apparently it's going to be kind of a horror story of Peter Parker sort of losing his mind. And as far as I can tell, is this a one-shot? This might be a one-shot, actually. If it is, that's fine. It's got a gorgeous Phil Noto cover. They do not have any other solicitations for this, so I guess this is going to be just one of one. Unless they're doing the Demon Days thing / the detective thing and doing it every couple of months. But anyway, it's going to be featuring apparently characters like Hobgoblin as his villain, so it'll be... this is going to be really interesting, seeing Peter Parker taking down a kind of dark road as Venom, and seeing, Peter Parker is a kid who has that kind of guilt complex. So that'll be really interesting, seeing how that affects and or changes him in this series / one-shot. Home #1 is a indie title starting up a new series, written by Julio Anta with art by Anna Wiesiek, Wieszczyk. I did my best. The story is about an immigrant boy torn away from his mother at the border, and at that point, with all the emotional turmoil and whatnot, he starts to get superhuman abilities. Lots of reasons I want to pick this up. Interesting sounding indie book, talking about real life issues such as the immigration at the US border, and then the added twist of the whole superhuman thing, making it a very grounded, but at the same time, very sci-fi story, is what I'm kind of hoping for. So, and of course, it's probably going to have a lot of really strong points of family and friendship, and of course, immigration and government and things like that. But I expect a lot of family talk and points about families being together and etc. Not really sure about what it is that his superhuman powers are going to be. It doesn't say anything about that in the solicitation at all, but it sounds really interesting. I'm not familiar with either of the creators on board, but I'm definitely going to pick up this #1 if I can find it at the local shops and check it out, because it does sound like something that has the potential to be very, very poignant and interesting for me as a reader. Phantoms on the Scan #1 is another indie #1 that I'm going to be trying out. It's written by Colin Bunn with art by Mark Torres. Colin Bunn is a writer who I am somewhat familiar with from his Marvel work. He's done some things that are kind of, I believe he did as Guardians of the Galaxy, if I'm not correct. If I'm not mistaken, excuse me. And so he's done some things that I'm familiar with. I recognize his name as something vaguely positive, so that's good. Mark Torres, I don't know. But the context of this issue is basically it is something about a comet that gives people psychic abilities, or I guess it gave this guy psychic abilities that slowly kill him, and it comes back every so often and gives people psychic abilities, and there's vague, problems and things that come up from that. No idea why it's called Phantom on the Scan. I guess I'll have to find out when I read it. I've had some really rough ups and downs with the indie number ones that I've been picking up recently. Some of them have been really excellent, but then some of them have been extremely disappointing. I know I didn't talk about the ones that were really disappointing on this past Friday's comic book picks and otherwise notable things discussions, because it would have been just a lot of downers on top of whatever else it was already that I was talking about that I'm sure was a bit of a downer anyway. But they were, there's a couple of issues that came out that were indie things that I picked up thinking they were going to be great, and I really did not like them. So I'm hoping that Home and Phantom on the Scan, both number one indie books, will turn that tide, and we will be back on track with me liking the new indie things that I'm picking up. Batman Urban Legends number 2 is part 2 of Question Mark in the Batman Urban Legends Anthology ongoing stories. There's a couple of stories that are going to be continuing through it, namely the Chip Zdarsky main story that follows, I believe, Red Hood and Batman, as well as the B story, which is going to be following that guy with the mask and the eyes that's like a red blanket over his face. I honestly can't remember his name. I'm not following that story, clearly. What I would like to pick up this issue for is the Cecil Castellucci and Marguerite Sauvage Batgirl versus Viros story. These two paired together to create Viros as a Batgirl villain, strictly a Batgirl villain. Towards the end, actually, I guess it was Batgirl number 50, which was Cecil Castellucci's final, her final issue on Batgirl, which, if you are looking for a good Batgirl run, I highly recommend that. I have a lot of thoughts about Cecil Castellucci's writing of Batgirl versus DC's direction of Batgirl. It really, really seemed, if you're familiar with her, it really, really seemed that Cecil wanted Batgirl, or rather wanted Barbara, to go a certain direction with her love life, namely to be with someone and not Nightwing, specifically not Nightwing, to not really be just a pawn of Bruce anymore, a few other things, and then they bring out the end of Death Metal, and they have her write this story that had this amazing, amazing Batman speech, but in the actual stuff that's happening in the story, Dick and Barbara get back together, which was an entire point that she made in Batgirl 50 that was not going to happen. That was a big point she made. So I definitely, and then of course you have Oracle Barbara being, which I predicted back like a year ago, Barbara as Oracle in Batman, being written terribly, honestly, being just his little sidekick again, which is once again something that Cecil Castellucci in Batgirl 50 made a point that she didn't want Barbara's future to be. So I definitely feel like she had certain opinions that she wanted to lay down for Barbara, and DC kind of turned her, had her put that, stupid Death Metal thing in with them. But anyway, in Batgirl 50, Marguerite Sauvage and her made this villain. There was actually a few other writers, female artists on that. It was also Annette was one of them, and I can't recall the third one. They were all female artists on this issue with her, but Marguerite Sauvage, I believe, was the one who created Viros with her. They it was not on purpose for the pandemic that she kind of came out at the same time of the pandemic virus. But it ends up being really appropriate. Her costume is simple. I have a lot of critiques of the Batman villains, which, good God, man, stop pumping out so many lame Batman characters. You're just like, every issue is like 6 new Batman characters, and they're all half thought through, and they're all half baked, and their costumes are so bad. Viros is, I think, an excellent example of a good villain who has been thought through and given a great, simple outfit. If I was to describe her outfit, it looks like bubblegum with glass shards in it. It's basically just a bubblegum pink dress with spiky shoulders, and then she has a medical mask that is kind of like a spike upward. It's really cool. This is going to be in black and white, of course. Oh, actually, no, it's not. That's right. This is not black and white. This is Batman Urban Legends. Cool. So it's not going to be in Batman black and white. She'll be in her normal pink outfit, I guess. I hope, because I really loved it. And hopefully this is going to be a standard Batgirl story, not involving Dick or Bruce or any of those other people who Castellucci clearly didn't want her to be involved with anyway. I'm really looking forward to it. It's enough for me to buy this, as the kind of comic reader, that I am. You kind of have to take these tiny little joys where you find them and embrace them very strongly to your chest. Because you're probably not going to get anything like that for a while again. But I love this, and I will be definitely buying that to read this story by Cecil Castellucci and Marguerite Sauvage. Thor and Loki Double Trouble Number 2 by Mariko Tamaki and Gurihiru, who, as I always remind people when I go through them on the podcast, is a duo of Asian female artists. So that's really exciting. This is a team that I think works out really well. Mariko Tamaki writes, interestingly enough, she's writing Detective Comics right now over at DC, and then here she is writing this all-ages book I'm pretty sure it's an all-ages book for Marvel, featuring Thor and Loki as brothers doing, brotherly things to one another, and then the very cartoon-esque art of Gurihiru, which I adore. It fits this kind of subject matter so beautifully. And also Gurihiru was on, I believe, Superman Smashes the Klan, as well as the Heroes at Home Marvel mini book they did with can't remember the writer's name at the moment, but Thor and Loki Double Trouble Number 2 is just a fun, kind of thing I picked up the first issue of because I knew it would be kind of fun, and it was really enjoyable to read. I had a great time reading it. Mariko Tamaki has a great sense of humor, and Gurihiru is always fun to read, to look at their art, so I will definitely be picking up this number 2 issue. It's just gonna be a stupid, ridiculous Thor and Loki adventure. Also have Chariot number 2 by Brian Edward Hill with art by Priscilla Pitt-Traits. I was blown away by the art in the first issue, which is a big part of why I'm sticking with it in the second issue. Brian Edward Hill is a phenomenal writer. He did Batman and the Outsiders fairly recently for DC. And Chariot is, of course, an indie series. It is about a guy who is down on his luck, and in the first issue, he pretty much comes across a possessed car, or a car that is possessed by its former owner, rather. And it kind of slaughters a bunch of gangsters who are trying to teach him a lesson. So, lot of wiggle room here to see kind of what's gonna happen. It's a really bizarre concept, but reading the creator's blurbs, I suppose, in the back of the issue was honestly a huge part of what made me interested in continuing the series, because it's the two of them, they've never met in person, they've spoken on the phone like only twice, and everything else has been done through text messages and emails and things, to make this book. And it's, both of them say in their little blurbs that it's kind of their love letter to 90s heavy metal, sci-fi, neon lights, race cars, Just all the crazy Fast and Furious, but not the Fast and the Furious, you know, just the cool Blade Runner in the 90s shit kind of stuff, you know. And so that's what got me really excited to read this, that they both are very passionate about that and just making this kind of the craziest out there book that they can. Sounds good to me. I'm in for that. Children of the Atom #2, which is of course by non-binary writer Vita Ayala and artist Bernard Chang. Vita is another one of those artists like Chip Zdarsky and Tom King, who pretty much anything that they write, I can almost guarantee I'm gonna pick it up and dig the heck out of it. So Children of the Atom #1 has been no exception to that. These subjects who are the characters in the series, that was a weird way of saying that. These kids who are the main characters in the series, I guess you would say the Children of the Atom, we haven't found out really what they are. They're basically exact duplicates of the power sets of the X-Men, but on these kids. So either they're taking these it's unclear if they have the powers or if it's their costumes and their suits that have the powers. I would assume it's them. But then you have the one who is, you know, like Cyclops. She's sitting around her school, because they're high school students, without any kind of eye protection, and there's no eye beam. So maybe it is their costumes. My other current theory is maybe they're a product of some kind of experimentation. Maybe it's Sinister. Shadow King seems to be really interested in kids right now. I don't know. Someone, possibly experimentation, or they just have these weird high-tech suits that give them the powers of the X-Men. How cool is that? So I'll be really looking forward to whatever the reveal is going to be, that what or who these kids are in Children of the Atom. The name also suggests that they are experimentations of some kind, but who knows? We'll see. Karmen #2 is by Guillaume March. It's issue 2 of 5. I believe he is a Spanish writer, an artist. I am so in love with this series, and it's only had one issue so far. What I was talking about before with the, you know, hit and miss indie stuff, this is definitely one that was a hit for me. Right on the nose. It's following an angel who kind of looks like a skeleton. She's got a very sweet face and pink hair, and she is introducing this young girl, or I guess this young woman who committed suicide, to her afterlife. And the young woman, I don't think, has fully realized what's happening. And in this issue, apparently we're supposed to get some revelations about friendship she has, potentially the reason that she did commit suicide, that she kind of realizes what's going on with that friendship, where the lifelong male friend, his new girlfriend, doesn't want him hanging out with her. So it's complicated real life situations and difficult things, and the way that the two of them interact and the way that the angel kind of takes her through all of these new experiences and explains things to her, and even the way that the young woman talks. Like I said this when the issue came out, but she learns that she can fly as this, you know, ghost person or whatever it is that she is now, and she talks about the experience of dreaming that you can fly, and her description of it is exactly what my experience of dreaming I can fly is like. It's pretty wild. So I'm completely in love with Karmen. It's a 5-issue series. It's, of course, it was written in Spanish and is translated into English. So you get a lot of the background special effects text bubbles and things that are still in Spanish, which is really nice. It's kind of like reading a manga that's been translated into English. So I enjoy this so much. It is so full of heart and thought, and you know, it's featuring a woman who has just committed suicide, who is completely butt naked, but it doesn't feel inappropriate. It doesn't feel, you know, not safe for work. It doesn't feel like he's showcasing her naked body. It feels like a newborn baby. I'm not really sure how he does that, but this naked woman, full-grown naked woman walking across the page just doesn't feel, it's not sexualized, it's not scandalous, it feels like it's her in her natural state, and it's I don't know how he does that, whether it's the writing or the art, but it is fantastic, and I so recommend this. Maniac of New York is having its third of its 3 issues coming out this week. It is, of course, by Elliot Callan and Andrea Moody, following the story of the 2 female... Well, it's following the story of New York City, who is a New York City that is under attack by an unstoppable serial killer. And this last issue will follow the 2 female detectives who are risking their own lives to hopefully save the young and few survivors of the most recent and kind of ongoing maniac attack in the subway before he gets to these survivors or gets to them. So it's kind of a race to see who can keep from dying longest. But this has been written so well. It's such a funny idea of a story that New York just kind of like, all right, we can't catch him, so I guess there's just a serial killer in New York. Stay in your house. Like, it's such a funny concept, but it really works, and I'm excited to see how the conclusion ends here. I have no idea. I assume they must succeed. It's probably going to be, if I have to guess, it's probably going to be one of those things where they kill him or whatever, and they can't find the body, and they look and the body's gone, or they kill him and, you look at the body and, the end panel is his eyes open or something, It's probably going to be something like that, but classic horror movie vibes, I think, for sure. And I've been enjoying it so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing this, whatever the ending is going to be. The Picture of Everything Else is a series that is kind of unsurprisingly enjoyable to me. It loosely, well, not so loosely, but it's kind of a follow-up to The Picture of Dorian Gray, if you're familiar with that. It's this guy Dorian gets this picture painted of him, and the picture is really him, and he is the picture. It's not that, but it's basically, if you stab him, the picture bleeds, and he's fine. It's basically what it is, and then, so any harm, the picture ages and he doesn't, So it's the guy who painted that. We find out about him, and he's a serial killer, and it's just this wild idea, this wild concept. It's by Dan Waters and Kishore Mohan. The art is stunning. It's a loose watercolor and ink pen art, but somehow it's extremely detailed while extremely simple at the same time. Their ability to precisely place their watercolors is fantastic, honestly. I think it's really great. This 3rd issue, I'm not sure how many the series is going to be, but this 3rd issue has Marcel, the main character, who has moved in with his former lover. I suppose they were former lovers, with the man who did paint that portrait of Dorian Gray, who also just proved that he can control any part of Paris, theoretically the world, as long as he can paint it well enough. That could be problematic, obviously. So I'm curious what Marcel kind of plans on doing here. You have to assume that he is going into the den of the lion to try and save the world, maybe? He's aware of what this man can do. Potentially just trying to save his partner, but then his former partner, I guess, but then his former partner seems to kind of be totally all over what this guy can do and, like, all about it, so he's clearly not going to just leave with him. I'm really excited to see more of the destruction and creative things that this guy can do. Really fun indie series. This is another one that's worked out really well for me recently. The Picture of Everything Else which is following more or less kind of like the aftermath of The Picture of Dorian Gray. Expanding upon the story, I guess. Black Cat number 5 by Jed MacKay and Michael Dowling. Dowling was the artist at the beginning of the series. Nobody liked it. There's a lot. I was actually the reason I stopped reading the first couple of issues of Black Cat was because the art was so horrendous. And now he's back. So I'm gonna keep up with it. I don't know if he's back for just this issue or what. I'm gonna keep up with the series because I've come to love Jed MacKay's Black Cat so much. And this is a new story arc called The Gilded City. The solicitation mentions that Fox has been having Felicia and her crew steal various items all over the city. It says why? Well, based on a preview I read, he's dying. Sorry, spoilers. So I imagine it'll have to do with that. I have an odd feeling about Fox. I always kind of have. I feel like he's not a good guy. He's clearly, he helped raise Felicia and has taught her everything he knows and all this stuff, but, something is just, very evil about him. Maybe we'll figure out what that is in this story arc once we're kind of discovering what it was that he's really having her steal and why. And of course, the future of Black Cat is looking solid because I think starting in June, there is the Infinite Destinies event, which is more or less being handled by Jed MacKay. And that's going to start with, I'm not sure what, but it'll be a couple of annuals, including the Black Cat annual, and continuing after the Black Cat annual and the other annuals will have, I guess, a tie-in to Infinite Destinies issues. I think it's 9 and 10 are tie-ins, or possibly 8 and 9. Yeah, I think it's 8 and 9 are tie-ins for this Infinite Destinies thing that's coming up with the Infinity Stones. So, and I believe issue 8's cover has been revealed, and that is Felicia with the Infinity Gauntlet full of gems. So I am looking forward to that. I don't know what's going to happen. I swear if that's how she goes out, I will be pissed, because why? I always worry about that. History has shown me no one is safe. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to the future of Black Cat, and hopefully it's going to continue well after that 9th issue and Infinite Destinies is gone. Hopefully she'll have well into her 20s, hope for this one. We've got now Homesick Pilots number 5. I was caught up with the glory of this indie series with issue 1. It was one of the ones that immediately works out. It's by Dan Waters and Casper Wijngaard, Wijngaard. Really, really gorgeous book. Fun, thoughtful, unique, creative, gorgeous interiors. It's basically the story of a girl trapped as a ghost in a haunted house. She's not dead, she's just kind of trapped there. This is the last issue of this first story arc, and the solicitation of the 6th issue kind of gives away part of what's going to happen here, but we've kind of known that that's coming from the initial marketing on the series that probably got everybody like me to jump onto the series at all. They did a great job of marketing it because they weren't having people come out with their reviews. They were just, marketing it, saying, this is what it's about. These are some pictures from the series. This is why you should read it. Not like, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and oh my god, if you don't read this, you're insane! Because then you read the book and it's not that good and you're disappointed. It's always what happens when that happens. This issue of Homesick Pilots, which is, like I said, the last issue of this first story arc, the house is supposed to be turning on Ami, which we saw that kind of starting in the last issue. And I suppose she will have to prove her worth to the house or figure out how to escape. Either way, I'm not really sure how that's going to go, because the next story arc, it could pick up with somebody else being the person inside the house. There's no reason for this to have to continue with Ami, even though I've really enjoyed her getting to know her character and her relationship with the house and her friends and everything. So that's, I don't know, it could be either way. We could pick up number 6 with somebody else in the house, or it could still be Ami trapped in there, or it could be a completely different status quo. So, really excited to pick this one up this week and see how this story arc ends before getting into the next one next month. Next up, we have Iron Man number 8. There are, after this, 1, 2, 3, it's going to be Iron Man, Thor, Daredevil, and then Wonder Woman, and we're back to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, if that's what you're waiting for. Iron Man number 8 is by, of course, Christopher Cantwell, with a guest artist, Angel Unzueta, Unzueta. Guest artist, it would appear. I have no idea what their art looks like, but I'm excited to find out. This is an issue that I am so excited for. I have the solicitation here. Of course, the series, before I get into that, the series I am reading strictly for Patsy Walker's Hellcat. I didn't read it initially until I think the 3rd or 4th issue was out, because I didn't even know she was in it, because it's Iron Man. Why would she be in it? And then I read a really, really good article online about how fantastic Cantwell was doing writing Patsy and her whole story and involving her with Iron Man and everything. So I went back and I bought the first 3 issues, I believe it was at that point in time, of Iron Man, read them all, absolutely dug the crap out of it. I still don't really care about the Iron Man parts, to be honest, but the Patsy parts are so good. And Cantwell joked around on Twitter for a while about how this is secretly his way to getting to write a Patsy series. So this issue is going to be entirely about Patsy. I'm so excited. The solicitation says, "It's up to a shell-shocked Hellcat to dig deep..." This is a line before that. It says, "It's up to a shell-shocked Hellcat to dig deep into her mind with the help of an old friend and psychic mentor, Moondragon, who reaches across the universe to help Patsy reclaim her once powerful mental abilities she left behind. But to reignite those powers, Hellcat is going to have to face some pretty frightening demons in her past. One of them literally the son of Satan himself." Okay, so let's go into explaining what this all means. Patsy was okay, so she's clearly, she was a character who came out in 1944's Miss America Comics number something or other, I'm pretty sure. She was a girl next door, feuding with her best friend over boys and, hair and who looks better. Very of the era character. After her own comics kind of faded off, it was stuff like Patsy and Hetty, romance comics, shit like that. Old school stuff. After that stuff kind of faded off, she was pulled into the official Marvel universe, I believe in the 60s, and then by the 70s, she becomes Hellcat. The cat was the first version of this moniker, but only had about 5 total appearances, and the cat then became Tigra. So that was, I can't remember her name right now, but the woman who was Tigra was originally the cat, and the suit that Hellcat wears was originally Tigra's suit as the cat. So, anyway, not long after Patsy gets this suit and becomes Hellcat, she wants to join the Avengers, but Moondragon insists that she needs to train her, kind of randomly, but she takes Patsy to Titan, the moon of whatever planet that is, and she teaches her all about these psychic abilities and mental powers and things. Then when Patsy returns sometime later, because of, whatever it was going on, she becomes a Defender, and through the years it's kind of off and on Defender and Avenger. And then while she's a Defender, she meets the son of Satan, Damon Hellstrom. There's some mix-up of genealogy for a while, but she comes back. Okay, they're not siblings. There was that scare for a little bit. They fall in love. Everything's hunky-dory. They get married. Through their marriage and their time being married, Damon and Patsy kind of withdrew from society and from their friends on the Defenders and the Avengers and the various other teams, which, understandably, if you know Patsy's history, was all of what she's about. Patsy is mainly about her friendships and her relationships. That's kind of what keeps her going in her day-to-day life, even though, her history with her old best friend Hetty was the way that it was. Her time in the Defenders, if you've ever read those old Defenders issues, is scattered with amazing moments of friendship between her and Valkyrie and Red Guardian and Clea, and just it's beautiful friendships that she had, and because of Damon and their marriage, she kind of stepped away from all of that and lost herself. And then when Damon becomes sort of the fully realized son of Satan, evil version of himself, she kind of snaps. One of Damon's villains shows up, convinces her to kill herself, and that's how she dies. When she's brought back some years later, it's actually on accident. Hawkeye goes to hell to save his wife, or yeah, I guess at that point still his wife, Mockingbird. But Mockingbird kind of pulls a switch on him and gives him Patsy's body instead. So she wasn't even supposed to come back. So that kind of adds to the trauma of everything. And then she's back, and she was written to be ignoring a lot of her powers. They kind of wrote off her psychic abilities, wrote off her history with the Defenders and the Avengers and Moondragon and everything, wrote off all that, and just kind of retained the girl next door best friend from the early days of her existence, and just added the Hellcat suit on top of that, and she was strictly the happy-go-lucky Hellcat. With this Cantwell Iron Man series, he is addressing those more complicated facts of her past so that she can work through it for the first time. She's never been allowed to work through her issues, and now she finally is. So that catches you up to what's going on with Patsy now. Clearly it's obviously going to be Moondragon, who I have to also mention, I'm really curious what Moondragon this is going to be. In the 616 Moondragon kind of went crazy because she was, what was it? She had the evil dragon, thing inside of her. It's like the Dragon of the Moon or something. I don't quite remember what it's called. But the Moondragon who was kind of on the Guardians of the Galaxy team for a while, she was from another universe. So she and the 616 Moondragon, which is 616 obviously is the main Marvel universe, kind of molded themselves together, and now they're one person. And that's what the current situation with Moondragon is, as it rests at Al Ewing's Guardians of the Galaxy, which is the only place that she's been. So I'm really curious, is this going to be that Moondragon, or is this going to be the original Moondragon and kind of ignoring that whole everything from Guardians of the Galaxy? I'm really curious. Of course, Moondragon is the daughter of Drax as well, which makes it even more complicated. Yeah, it's well, we're gonna see. I'm so curious. This is gonna be a lot probably to address, and Cantwell himself has already said on Twitter that this issue is all going to be Patsy and Moondragon. So no matter what happens really here, I can already tell you I'm going to enjoy the shit out of it. Not really sure how much Patsy is going to be in Iron Man going forward after this. I'm hoping to still have her around, but honestly, it's hard to tell. It's hard to say. We'll have to see what happens in this issue and everything else going forward. Thor Number 14 is, of course, by Donny Cates and Nick Klein. It's the Prey storyline finale. Finally, Donald Blake is somehow going to beat all the Asgardians again before fighting Thor and losing finally. This kind of feels like Donny Cates is throwing badass spaghetti at the wall to see what'll stick, regardless of plot. Just trying to get as much badass stuff as he can, and is not paying attention to logic or reasoning or anything. He's just throwing it all, seeing what works. I'm really hoping that my opinion of this Thor arc, or I guess series, gets better going forward, because right now I have a very low, mid-grade at least, opinion of it. So, mid-grade at best, I should say. Yeah, we'll kind of see. We already know partly what's going to happen. Beta Ray Bill from his series, we know he's going to get his powers restored by Odin, but he's not going to be able to change back out of his Beta Ray Bill powered up form. But aside from that, not really sure. Hopefully nothing too terrible. Daredevil 29 is by Chip Zdarsky with art by Marco Caccetto. On my notes here, I literally just have written because this is so good. That was a really weird noise I made, but you get the point. Chip Zdarsky, like I've said at least like twice or three times on this podcast episode already, is one of my top favorite writers of the modern era. And his Daredevil is incredible. I have read, the Bendis Daredevil. I've read the Soul Daredevil. I've read bits and pieces of old school 90s Daredevil and, stuff from the 80s and when Elektra first showed up and the Frank Miller stuff. And, I've read bits and pieces of everything pretty much of Daredevil. This is the best Daredevil I've ever read. Chip Zdarsky has an incredible way of capturing Matt's personality, which includes the, self-sacrificial everything, the Catholic guilt, the religious backbone, the stubbornness, and the fact that he's been able to pull in so many, like, social issues without it really, without it doing much degrading the story at all, for sure, but without it feeling like it's forced. It's all very natural and just so well written. I can't say enough good things about this Daredevil series, and now Matt's in prison, and Elektra is Daredevil. We have at least 2 more issues of Elektra as Daredevil, and it will never, ever be enough for me. I'm so in love with this arc of Elektra being Daredevil. It's just so good, and Marco Caccetto draws her just beautifully. Her outfit is gorgeous. Her hair is stunning. It's just so good. I'm gonna be sad when she's not Daredevil anymore. I totally want to be Elektra Daredevil for Halloween. Am I too old for that? No, you're never too old for that. That shit's awesome. Really excited for Chip Zdarsky Daredevil whenever it comes out. There has not been of this 29 issues, there has not been a single issue that I have not put down and been like, man, that is a good ass issue. Every single one of them leaves me with that reaction. So if you have not read this Daredevil series, get on it. And last, I'm finally at the end of the comic stuff. We're almost done. Wonder Woman 771 is the most negative thing I have to say about anything, even the Donny Cates stuff. It's by Becky Cloonan, Michael Conrad, and Travis Moore. I really like Becky Cloonan, but what the hell is going on here? I pulled up a picture of the variant of this month's Wonder Woman, and my husband looked over and said, "Is that Sif?" Which I think is enough to prove my point of why I really don't like this outfit for Diana. It doesn't make sense. This whole arc, honestly, doesn't make sense. I read some of Becky Cloonan's stuff that she wrote recently as part of an anthology comic, and it was so much better than this. The series is getting these amazing reviews, one after another online. And I just don't get it. It's only issue 1 and there's so many good reviews. I just don't get it. I really, really don't feel like they've earned that praise that they're getting, and it certainly doesn't own up to that praise in my eyes. I just don't understand. This is not a Wonder Woman story. This is a Sif story. And I can't see it as anything but that, because everything about it just screams Sif and Marvel and the Thor stuff at Marvel. Like, we'll see how this next issue goes and where it continues, but, I'm really looking forward to Cloonan's Wonder Woman Black and Gold anthology story, which is coming up, I think, in the first issue, as well as Joelle Jones's Wonder Girl in May, so at least I can have something that feels like a proper DC Wonder Woman story in my life again, because this doesn't even feel like a DC comic, which, sometimes is a compliment, but I don't mean it that way in this sense. So, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 4. This was a big episode. And I had a few things wrong going into this, mostly that I had assumed Karli had already given all 20 of the super serum doses out, but I was wrong about that. She hadn't. I'd also been theorizing about how John Walker's turn to evil would take place, and I was wrong in my theories about how all of that would go down, which is actually tied into being wrong about the serum being all used up, so a lot of pieces falling into place for me in this episode, but still a few questions, or rather concerns, about Karli and some other things. So, this is one of the things that this really left me with is How is this going to end for Karli? She won't let herself be taken in, I'm sure. John Walker will probably end up wanting to kill her. She's probably going to have a harsh reaction to her friend having been killed by John in front of her, which, sorry, spoilers. And then Zemo doesn't want superpowered people just hanging around like loose ends. So how can this possibly end for her? Is there some kind of possibility that she could turn good and be a hero? I don't know. We'll think about that while I talk about the episode here. It pretty much starts with Bucky's chat with Ayo, who, of course, her first appearance, I have to brag, it was Ultimates number 1 with the Al Ewing series, and it was damn good series. During this chat, we see a flashback between the two of them in Wakanda, where she is helping him through breaking his brainwashing, basically. They clearly have a very close relationship built through all of that time there, and they clearly care for each other in some way or another. So based on what we see later in this episode, I would also suggest that they've been romantically or possibly at least sexually involved at some point. In this alley discussion, he does thank her for her and Shuri's help. He clearly doesn't have that much of a relationship with T'Challa because he isn't the brain that Shuri is or the soldier caretaker type that Ayo is. And we don't get any answers to what is happening in Wakanda right now necessarily that they might tie into Black Panther 2. So didn't get anything there. Might later in the series, potentially, maybe. We'll see. Ayo is also slightly offended that Bucky is even working with Zemo, since he was the one that they saved Bucky from, basically, in the first place, since Zemo had that ability to influence him with those key words and brainwashing. Ayo basically just mentions that their country is still in mourning for T'Chaka, and they are shamed by the way that he was killed. Obviously, she is here to take Zemo back to Wakanda with her. She gives Bucky 8 hours, so he heads back and reports to Sam and Zemo all of that information. They start talking updates on the Karli situation, and apparently she somehow only killed 3 people in that fire from the last episode. Zemo calls her a supremacist, referencing Red Skull a whole lot, arguing that anyone with a serum is inherently on the path to becoming what Red Skull was. He insists that basically one of them will have to kill the other, her or Walker, because there has never been another Steve Rogers, and it's just not going to work that way. How it would have if Steve was around. This makes me all a little concerned. I know I keep mentioning Sin, the character who is the, I believe, daughter of Red Skull, who I theorized Karli's character was going to be. However, I'm a little concerned that she may end up being Sin as well as Karli. That would be stupid, I think, because the thing that happens with Sin is she gets something, I think it's like Yelena Belova or somebody slashes her face or something happens, to its acid, I'm not really sure what it is, and she ends up peeling her face off like Red Skull. And here you have Zemo talking about how, he's warning everybody that this is what Karli's going to be. She's basically going to end up being like Red Skull. That's a tease I can't ignore. I hope that she doesn't end up doing this. It would be cool. Yeah, it'd be cool, because I would have been, kind of right in a sense, but at the same time, that would be Marvel taking now 2 female characters that you had the potential of having separately and, fluffing out and filling out and everything and getting to know. You have now made that just 1 character, which I, have some issues with, but whatever. While they're talking, Sam figures that the woman who died, Danya, in the last episode, was most likely a really important person in the Flag Smasher refugee community, so they're probably going to be doing some kind of ceremony for her, and if they can figure out where that is, possibly they could have a chat with Karli and get to the bottom of this. So the 3 of them show up to the Flag Smasher camp, or I guess it's the refugee camp. Sam wanders around until he can get someone to tell him what's going on, and basically the guy tells him, "We don't care who you are, we don't trust you." So not really good news for Sam. Zemo, however, is outside being kind of pedo-ish to a little girl. He offers all these kids Turkish Delight, and they all gather around, and it's really weird giving kids some candy, but I guess it's different because it's Eastern Europe or something. I don't know. The little girl tells Zemo where the funeral will be, and then Sam and Bucky can't hear this, but he points to the two of them and tells her they're not trustworthy. So interestingly, I kind of thought we were going to see what that was going to pan out to be for, but interestingly, we don't actually see his purpose for telling her that in this episode, which leaves me curious if that's going to become relevant sometime later. There's a fair amount of conversation in this episode about the displaced people of the world. It gets connected to his sister's situation, Sam's sister's situation a fair amount. But the thing is that the people Karli is protecting and fighting for specifically didn't get snapped. They were the ones who lived through those 5 years on Earth, took the jobs in the houses that were never theirs but were free now. But then everybody came back, and what were those people who came back supposed to do? One of you was going to end up being a refugee. It was just the way the situation was. It doesn't mean the people who came back shouldn't be back. It doesn't mean that they stole anything from you. It means it was a difficult-ass situation, and no one was gonna win. Anyway, over the phone, they talk to Sharon for a few minutes, which is pretty cool. She reports that the power broker is pissed about everything going on. He wants Karli shot. He wants Karli dead or the shots back. You have to remember, they killed the only scientist in the world while they were in Madripoor who could make the super serum, which is what Power Broker wants, and Karli stole, so Karli is in pretty hot shit right now from a couple of angles. It became, to me, really obvious that John was going to take the super serum and go crazy when Karli started talking to her buddy about it, whether or not they're doing the right thing by making more of them. He's actually the buddy who says he used to be a fan of Captain America, which turns into something kind of funny later. He does say this one thing that I have to clarify is wrong. He says, if you're doing something and it makes you scared, you're probably doing the right thing. No, that is incorrect. Don't stick your hand in a blender. Don't shoot your friend in the face. Like, what? It's terrible advice. And she's like, oh yeah, that sounds like good advice. No, that's terrible advice. Literally the worst. Anyway, he also mentions that he thinks Karli would make a good Captain America. Once again, is it possible that she's going to end up being accepted by the public as a hero? I'm not really sure what they're planning on doing with her, genuinely. And I also genuinely don't understand her hatred for the Captain America shield itself. She goes off about how it should be destroyed and it's a symbol of a bygone era. Is that because it's a symbol for America? For one country of the world? I'm not really sure. The shield itself doesn't really symbolize anything besides Steve in my head, but that's just me, so... it symbolizes what Steve is supposed to be, not necessarily what just Captain America is. So, anyway. The trio of them, Zemo, Bucky, and Sam, they all head out to the funeral, and they run into the new Cap, which is John, and his buddy, Battlestar, Lamar. They argue a lot, which basically ends in him insisting to come along. You know he's gonna be the one to fuck this up. You know he is. The little girl from before, she shows Zemo where to go to the funeral. He pays her, and everyone waits outside while Sam goes in to talk to Karli. Zemo even gets handcuffed to some machinery by John, because John is clearly a hothead losing it right now. Karli is up on the balcony when Sam walks up to the balcony, is below the balcony when Sam walks onto the balcony. So she spots him right away, panics a little bit even, but finishes her speech pretty strong, and when everybody leaves, they have a little chat. He says he came alone, he just wants to talk. And it's actually going very well until fucking John Walker gets antsy and bursts in too early, making Karli think Sam tricked her, and she runs off. John, of course, losing his patience was wild. It became so obvious that he's too hot-headed and will most likely end up taking the serum for all the wrong reasons. He was losing his mind. Zemo is the one to break out of the handcuffs where John put him, and he's also then one to catch Karli, more or less. He manages to shoot her in the side. She's a super soldier, not bulletproof, it'll heal, but it still hurts. So he's able to get to the serum that she drops on the ground when he shot her, before her, and smashes almost all the vials, almost, because if you were counting, there was one left. And of course, when Karli gets helped out, a Walker comes in, knocks out Zemo, and has no witnesses here to see him pick up the last unbroken super serum cartridge and pocket it. Of course he does. He's so easy to tempt. He's like goddamn Adam in the Garden of Eden, man. You can see it in his face when he looks at it. Like Gollum with the Ring of Power. Jesus. So much temptation in his eyes. Surprisingly, Karli takes her loss of the vials pretty well. She says she just wants more fighters. Says that they started this all together, so they'll end it together. It's her and her little buddy from earlier. They get a message then of threats from the power broker. Of course, we knew this was coming. But Karli knows she doesn't have the serum anymore, so she decides she's just going to deal with that later. It's probably going to become a problem sooner than later. She's going to deal with Sam now, and she contacts his sister. Bad idea. Zemo and the boys get back to the hotel. They're in rough shape after this whole incident. Sam says he would not take the serum, no question about it. Zemo reiterates how super soldiers can't be allowed to exist, at which point Sam asks about Bucky, which is a good point. What will happen to him? It's kind of... I assume he'll just kind of end up doing his own thing. I don't know. Then Bucky comes into the room, and he points out how insane Walker is. They actually have a little talk about how they all agree that he has lost it completely. And just then, they're greeted by a furious Walker who bursts into their room. Of course. They don't even have time to argue very long. Just long enough for John to threaten Sam. Because, of course, yeah, Captain America threatening to fight somebody. It's like a cop threatening to fight you. Like, what are you doing, man? They don't have very long of that before Ayo and the rest of the Dora... Well, not the rest. 2 other Dora Milajae arrive. I believe it was 2 or 3 of them total. Telling Bucky that it is time up for Zemo and they're here to take him back. There are, I believe, 3 of them total. Walker tries to introduce himself. Calls their spears pointy sticks, which, wow, the condescending... I didn't even know a person could be that condescending. Sam warns him not to start this fight that he can't finish, which is great advice. He tries to say that the Dora Milajae have no jurisdiction here, and Ayo comes at him with, the Dora Milajae have jurisdiction wherever the Dora Milajae find themselves to be. And Walker decides that it's a good idea to step a step closer, flip out his arm, and slap his hand on his shoulder. Or rather, try to. I actually yelled when I saw him going for that, because, buddy, we know this is a bad idea! This is a terrible idea! And of course, it starts a fight. Him and Battlestar end up getting their butts kicked. You don't put your hands on a trained warrior like that, my man. Who are you? It ends up being John and Battlestar getting their bums whooped. Sam suggests that they should do something to help. So Bucky calls out, "Looking good, John," or Cap or whatever it was. Just looking good. Oh, I loved it. They eventually do have to step in to keep the Dora Milajae from actually killing these dudes, because they were trying to. They were pretty close. But even all 4 of them facing off with them still get their butts whooped so hardcore. Of course, one of the main takeaways of this fight that everybody has is Ayo chops at Bucky's arm a few times with her hand, and his arm drops off. I could not stop laughing. I figured out what she was doing because she went chop, chop, chop with her hand, kind of like stabbing at it a few times. I'm not sure if she was trying to hit a series of mechanisms or just make sure she hit the right point and just wasn't quite hitting the right point until that last chop and she finally got it right and it fell off. I don't know which one it is. Either way, the shit was awesome and fucking hilarious. He confirms later he did not know she could do that. It brings up a lot of I guess context about his relationship with Wakanda, but she then calls him by his name in Wakandan before she, walks away. That was the moment I was certain that they had screwed. Okay, it had to have happened by then. Really, I just love this whole scene. Ao goes and then tells one of her partners to give Walker his shield back because he couldn't pull it out of the table, so she did it for him before flipping it up onto her arm perfectly. And so she kind of like looks down at him sitting on the floor where she was literally just about to kill him and drops it and is like, all right, fine. He knows that she won. And when they go, this part really got me. He says, they weren't even super soldiers. Buddy, there were 4 of you, and all 4 of you got your asses kicked. Even the super soldier. Don't take that personally. Sure, you're Captain America, but you know what? I bet you any money Steve Rogers probably would have gotten his ass kicked here too. Mostly because he probably didn't actually want to hurt them, but that's just another difference between him and Steve. It's just another reason he should not be Captain America. Also, Zemo escapes during the fight, so that's, great. The Dora Milajae move along when they see that because they have nothing left here. They wanted Zemo, Zemo's gone, bye bitch. Later on in the episode, John asks his friend Battlestar, Lamar, if he would take the serum himself, and he jokes, hell yeah. But then they talk about it for a little more, and he mentions how it makes a person more of everything about themselves, giving really excellent foreshadowing to what's coming. Sam gives his sister a few tips to be safe after Karli calls and threatens her and her sons, and then he heads to meet Karli. She wants him to come alone, but of course he doesn't. He brings Bucky because he's not fucking stupid. I'm cussing a lot in this one, sorry. Karli claims that she would never hurt his sister, which doesn't make sense because she literally just threatened her and her kids. She says that she says that Sam is just a tool in the regime that she wants to destroy, and she wants him to join her or let her go. Things are kind of going pretty decent in this conversation when Sharon warns him over comms that Walker has figured out where the Flag Smashers are. And I didn't really understand this part, but Karli immediately starts fighting them. I guess she assumes that this was a distraction. It's the best that I can guess. And they all go and they all basically run out as fast as they can and head back to wherever it is that Walker and Battlestar are, where the Flag Smashers are, I guess. So, Walker and Battlestar, they head to this hideout. Lamar pretty much immediately gets taken, and that's when we start seeing signs of Walker having actually taken the serum already. He can hear really well, he's moving really fast, probably too fast, and then he pulls his shield out of the wall without trying. When we saw earlier, he couldn't get it out of a wooden table, so clearly there's a little bit of a difference here. Battlestar gets tied up and knocked out, or knocked out and tied up, and they spend so long making us think beautifully. That works out so well. They convinced us that Battlestar was going to die in that drippy bathroom that they tied him up in because of the shots and everything. It was beautiful foreshadowing, really, truly beautiful. At this point, my husband's sitting on the couch next to me going, basically predicting exactly what's going to happen because you can feel it practically. With that foreshadowing and with everything else that's going on, something big is about to go down, and you're sitting here on the edge of your seat bouncing up and down like, oh my god, what is it? It's really awesome. So Sam is the first one of the rest of them to really witness John's superpowers, asking him what he did because he immediately sees the issue here. All John says back is, they took Lamar, and he runs off. He has lost it, dude. This is gonna be like taking away a kid's favorite stuffed animal, or their ice cream. He doesn't know how to express it because he's a small kid, and you took away his ice cream, so he's gonna just throw a fit. That's what this is gonna be. The 4 of them they all end up fighting various Flag Smashers, including Karli, on the main floor of this abandoned building. Really great fight sequence, really great fight choreography, and use of weapons in the scene. And then Karli punches Lamar straight into a concrete pillar. He hits it flat on his back and slides down, immediately lifeless. Everyone, audience, in person, we can all tell he's dead immediately. It's shocking how fast it was. And they're all shocked. Karli and the rest of her people obviously have to run off really quickly because they know what's about to go down. John heads up to check on Lamar, trying to wake him up. I swear, it's like a puppy trying to wake up its dead owner. It is sad and pathetic at the same time. And if, of course, you know, when he figures out that he's dead, he becomes severely enraged. He jumps out the window of whatever story of the building they're on. Landing on a car below, he spots a flag smasher. It happens to be the one who said he used to be a fan of Captain America, right? He spots him, he locks onto him like a mad dog, and chases him down. He knocks him down in the middle of a public square while the kid is begging for his life, saying, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." John lifts the shield up above his head and uses the shield of Captain America to chop this kid's head off. They don't show it, but they're pretty clear about showing his whole head and chest during this event, leaving John just the neck to have been hitting. He decapitated this guy with Steve's shield. There is an incredible shot of everyone in the rows watching him, in the crowd watching him. Phones streaming everything live. You can see when John kind of realizes what's going on, but he can't say anything. No one says anything. Karli is in the crowd, so are Bucky and Sam. They're all frozen in shock. The final shot of the episode is John Walker shot from below, gripping his shield, which is covered in thick blood at the point, I keep hitting my microphone, sorry, at the point of impact, which, damn, dude, that is visceral. That is quite an image. So I ask again, how is this going to change the end for Karli? We're still owed, supposedly, a Elena Belova cameo, unless they change that because of the movie dates. Sharon Carter is still obviously a big player, and the Power Broker is about to want her head on a platter, so now obviously John wants her dead too. Actually, he may just want her to suffer because he already hunted down and killed her best friend, so it's even-ish. You know, from his eyes he may see it like that. I don't know, maybe he still wants her dead because she did it herself. But again, is there some way that she's going to become a hero through all of this? We only have 2 more episodes left. I'm not honestly sure how this is going to end. We have so much more Marvel stuff coming up so fast that you can theorize up the wazoo about what this is going to connect to, who's going to make a cameo, what stuff this may lead into in the future. I don't know. I'm not sure. What I'm kind of stuck with right now is, how is John going to get phased out, and what's going to be the end for Karli? I can pretty much assume Sam and Bucky are going to be kind of mainstays in the MCU for a little bit. That's fine. We can see that kind of happening. But Karli, like I said, I can't see her submitting, and I can't see her, I don't know, maybe she'll become a hero. Maybe she gets killed. That would be pretty dark, though, so hopefully not. Maybe she becomes a full-on villain like Sin if they do all the whole Sin thing and gets her face, melted off or something. I don't know. There's a lot of options. And then for John, he's lost it. And he doesn't really have a moral north anymore, which was probably Battlestar for him, to keep him grounded. So he's probably only going to get worse now. I don't know, this next episode, I'm really, really curious to see how it's going to start, because are Sam and Bucky going to try and arrest him? Well, they don't really have that power to do that. Are the police in this country going to try and arrest him? Do they feel like they have the power to do that? Is he just going to go back to the US and get arrested? Like, are they just going to pretend that was him in the right? Most likely they're going to do that, pretend that he was in the right, and just kind of try to write it off. But obviously the world's not going to write that off. The world remembers who Steve Rogers was, and that was his shield, and that was not the way Steve Rogers would approve of using that shield. So there's a fair amount here left to wonder, and I am thrilled with it all. Also, there's some actor, I guess he is, on Twitter, trying to start a feud over the whole Wakanda arm thing. What? They have every right to do that to his arm. To put that mechanism in there without telling him. And I saw one tweet that was an excellent response to that, and basically it just says, an engineer at Shuri's level clearly thought through the applications of her tech and the hubris of men in power. There you go. That's why they did that. It just shows more brains than anything coming from the people of Wakanda. So a lot to look forward to in these last 2 episodes. They are going to be killer episodes, and they're probably going to be close to an hour long. Because if I recall, they said that it was 6 hours, and we're doing just under an hour for these episodes so far, right? So these are probably going to be at least an hour long, if they're sticking with the, what they've told us so far. So, something else that I wanted to mention that I'm just remembering now, I believe it was Thursday, this past Thursday, the Marvel fan page, or official fan page, I guess, on Twitter or somewhere, YouTube, I guess, released what they called the Zemo cut, which was an hour long. There was that whole thing in episode 3 of Zemo dancing in Wandapur. Jesus, Anna. In Majapur. And it was, people immediately latched onto that. It was all of, 5 seconds of him dancing. They put out an hour-long version of that, repeating over and over again. However, the thing that I wanted to point out about that was, it was obviously hilarious. The repeating section was about 25 seconds. I would like to mention this because, if you recall, or if you watched the making of WandaVision behind-the-scenes thing that they did for that, you will know that through the time period of them actually putting out the episodes and the audience watching it and reacting to it, they were changing things behind the scenes for upcoming episodes to make it more enjoyable for the audience based on our reactions to the episodes as they were coming out. I was wondering before if this is something that they were going to do or even able to do with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Based on that, quote, Zemo cut, which when I say that I'm referring to the 25 seconds that they made out of the expanded from the 5-second clip. They didn't make it slow motion. There was some slow-mo in there, but it was just people. It was 25-second clip of him dancing. They had 20 extra seconds that they just had floating around in their editing room that they threw together then. Easily, it seems. I definitely think that shows they would have no problem shuffling entire chunks of these last 2 episodes or last few episodes to make it work better from a fan perspective based on how they're seeing fans react to things. So I'm really curious if we get a behind the scenes for this one. I know we are getting a behind the scenes for this one, but I'm curious if they're going to mention any of that, or if we'll ever find out if they did any of that shuffling behind the scenes for these last couple of episodes. But in any case, all really cool stuff. I'm excited to see how these last 2 episodes go. It's gonna be pretty wild. I was gonna go on for a little while here about this Warner Brothers problem that I've seen now. But I want to talk about Extreme Carnage more, and we're already pretty far into this episode. So basically, the whole Warner's thing, I wrote out this really long, bitchy complaint that I was gonna basically write off here. But yesterday on Twitter, I saw this and actually groaned. They're now putting out hashtag release the Batfleck movie. Good God, people. Like, Warner, this is why you don't negotiate with terrorists. For some reason, all of Snyder's fans, and I guess Snyder himself, believe that he is due, somehow, a fully creative controlled Justice League universe and solo films for at least Batman, if not others, too. I guess they just think that the fact that no one ever has full control of a film should apply to Snyder for some reason. Every filmmaker has to bend to a corporate decision or two, always. Snyder and every filmmaker also has to prove themselves as an effective decision maker on a film set creatively, and Snyder hasn't necessarily done that because his movies for Warner have been met with such harsh criticism, and his fan base is honestly a headache for them. He hasn't proved himself, and yet they're bending to give him all of this stuff. And the fact that they did bend and give him Justice League Demands, looky-loo. Now his fans think that they have, or rather know that they have the grounds to scream on, and are doing just that all over Twitter. I've already blocked the hashtag. I don't need that drama in my life. I don't think Snyder's a good enough filmmaker for people to be writing their entire lives on this, to be taking time out of their jobs and their days to spend so much time and energy on this. That was my under 2 minutes rant about that. And now we're going to move on to something much more enjoyable, for me at least, Extreme Carnage. This was an announced mini-event for Marvel and the rest of the Symbiotes. Spoilers for Venom number 34, But Flash Thompson is back as Anti-Venom. He was dead for a long time, and now he's not, so that's fun. He will be a key player in the Extreme Carnage event. Other characters include Venom, Carnage, Phage, Scream, Lasher, Riot, and Agony, aka the Life Foundation symbiotes, their brother and their dad. The Life Foundation symbiotes have always tried to reconcile the sometimes noble intentions of their hosts with the often bloodthirsty impulses of the symbiotes. But the Life Foundation symbiotes aren't the only symbiotes who find themselves reinvented after the King in Black, and Carnage has plans for his younger siblings. That is taken from the Marvel website itself. It kicks off with Extreme Carnage Alpha, which they love doing that, number 1 in July. It is going to be written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, who is doing an excellent job at DC right now with his Man of Steel things, or whatever it is that he's doing over there. And it's going to have art by Manuel Garcia, and wraparound cover by Filipino artist Lionel Francis Yu, featuring basically all of the symbiotes that are going to be in it, or all of the symbiote characters that are going to be in it. I also took this from the Marvel site. This is going to be kind of a longer quote here, so be ready. After that, the event will take place over a series of one-shots, each one spotlighting a different symbiote offspring, beginning with Scream. Woohoo! Extreme Carnage, Scream, number 1. We'll see the return of writer Clay McLeod Chapman and artist Chris Mooneyham, the team behind Scream, Curse of Carnage. Their reinvention of one of Marvel's most iconic and lethal symbiotes continues as Scream must find a way to put an end to the twisted vision that Carnage has in store for their kind. They go on to say, Andy Benton has always been a fighter, and she's never... I guess this is the proper solicitation. Andy Benton has always been a fighter, and that's never been truer since she bonded to the Scream symbiote a few months ago. Oh, it's only been a few months. Huh. But even after Absolute Carnage and King in Black, Andy has never had to fight like this. And, of course, I can't read today. Worse still, if she can't save her symbiote from whatever unseen force is affecting it, she might have to do it alone. And then there was a quote from Clay McLeod Chapman, the writer of Andy Benton and Scream, on the saga of Andy Benton as he's been writing it. Extreme Carnage is a dream. Scream come true. Not only am I utterly in awe of the sheer talent involved in mapping out this massive event, but I feel honored to be able to return to the character of Scream and further explore the complex relationship dynamics between them and Andy Benton. These two characters have had such a profound bond with one another, whether fused together or torn apart, that every time I get to tell another chapter in their legacy, it feels like an immense privilege. Viva la Scream. And that's going to be coming out July 14th. I am a huge Scream fan. I know I've mentioned it a lot before, how much I would love to see more of her in the Marvel Universe, and I'm glad that we are at least seeing a little bit more of her in the Marvel Universe for this event. After that, they have one shot for Phage, of course, called Extreme Carnage Phage number 1. It's going to be written by Steve Orlando with Gerardo Sandoval. It says a bunch of stuff. It's a solicitation. There's a quote from Orlando on Phage, which is pretty cool, which is basically saying that he was a big fan of the Maximum Carnage event in the 90s, and was a big fan of the Super Nintendo Life Foundation, I guess, game that they had at the time, and that was a big part of his life growing up, and now he's excited to write this, so good to know. If you're a fan of Phage, definitely pick that one up, and there will also be one-shots for the rest of the Life Foundation symbiotes, which are Lasher, Riot, and Agony, and I think there's also going to be... Is there going to be an Anti-Venom one, a Venom one, and a Carnage one-shot, too, I assume. My concern here for this event, obviously, would be over the future of Scream / Andy Benton. Her first book here, or I guess I should say her book is the first after the introduction, and it just really says that she's trying to stop Carnage. But then the event goes on after that, so clearly she doesn't stop him. I would really hate for something like that, for something bad to happen that keeps her out of the rest of the event. I just want to see a lot of Scream. Otherwise, this looks really cool. While Scream is the only one that I'm super familiar with right now, I have always felt like the Life Foundation symbiotes were more or less my main Peter Parker, Venom, Spider-Man interests lie, aside from the Spider-Woman. They all first appeared, of course, in Venom Lethal Protector series in 1993, I believe it was, with Scream leading the way for the others, and also being the first female symbiote. So that's always a lot of fun. And to be honest, half the reason that I like them is because I do, the Life Foundation symbiotes that is because I do greatly enjoy their pretty colors. I'm not even kidding. Scream is yellow and red, Phage is red and orange, Riot is this grayish blue kind of color, Agony is a kind of purpley pink depending on what comic you're reading, and then Lasher is green and black. They look excellent together, I've got to say. Agony is traditionally feminine, displaying like Scream, even though they are genderless, the symbiotes themselves, it's really just their hosts who they take on the gender of. So it'll be cool to see her expanded upon a little bit more, I hope. I know nothing about, well, not nothing, I know very little about these characters, but I've always wanted to get more into them, so hopefully this will be a really great jumping off point and inspire me to go back and read some of the older stuff that I haven't read in a long time, or haven't finished really. I haven't finished the whole Lethal Protector series, I just read Scream's issue, so. And also, the last time we saw all 5 of the Life Foundation symbiotes together was the first King in Black Planet of the Symbiotes tie-in, just a couple of months ago, which had a story featuring Scream running into them, but on different sides of the battle. Scream was fighting for life on Earth, and they were fighting for Null. Excuse me. So this was definitely, this is definitely going to be an interesting family reunion, to say the least. I'm looking forward to figuring out who gets to work on the other character issues, because Marvel tends to tap some interesting talent for these kinds of one-shot mini-event things. And already they have 3 really unique creators. I'm not really a big fan of Steve Orlando, especially when he's writing female characters, but this is not a female character that he's writing, mainly. And he seems to be a lifelong fan of this kind of stuff, which is a good sign for any writer writing anything. They're a lifelong fan of it, so, because they don't want to do bad on it, obviously. So I'm really excited for this. We have a lot left to find out about it. This is only the first 3 issues, and there's going to be probably 7 or 8 total. So keep your ears open for all of this news, and as we get more of this news, I will obviously be talking about that on the podcast. I think that just about wraps up today's episode. This is episode 13A. I will be back this coming Friday. This is the 16th for episode 13B. At that time, I will be covering my comic book picks and things that I feel are notable about the comic books that came out this week based on my comic book pull list, which I just talked about in this episode. So I hope you come back to hear about that. I will also have whatever news and announcements that come from the industry, gossip, you know, rumors, theories, all that kind of stuff that's really fun to talk about. I will have anything that's new and relevant in the geek communities as a whole, I will be talking about there. Of course, something I did not talk about on this episode was a lot of the Hasbro toy announcements that came from the last week. There wasn't anything super huge. The biggest thing that I would really feel like mentioning would be that they have a Riri Ironheart figure that's going to be coming, so I'm excited for that. We already have that on pre-order, but the rest of them, honestly, I don't really care about, so if you like Riri, pick that out. I think she's probably sold out, though. Anyway, we'll be back on Friday the 16th to talk more about comic books and comic book culture and whatever is in the news revolving around general geekery. You can find me online. My website is sensationalshegeek.weebly.com. It's got the Weebly extension because I don't pay for it. I have a good amount of writing on there from reviews of comic books and things. I have reading orders and commentaries on reading orders for some of my favorite female characters in comic books. I have discussions of themes in comics. I have pull lists and pick lists of the past. And I have the podcast notes for this podcast, which is basically just my notes that I work off of when I go through the podcast to make sure I don't forget what I'm talking about. Which I've put on the website to let access to anybody who potentially is hearing impaired or just prefers reading over listening to me talk. So that is also there on the website if you're interested. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram. My username is Anna with the Comics. My Twitter username is Savage She-Geek. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I do this Monday and Friday, so if you listen and have anything to say, please let me know. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can like and subscribe the video. That would be really helpful. And of course, this podcast is available anywhere podcasts are streaming besides Pandora, because I have yet to get that approved. So Anywhere else, literally. From Podbean to iTunes to YouTube to, all the other ones, whatever they are. This podcast is everywhere. So I hope you like it. I hope you listen to it, and I hope you continue enjoying it, because I enjoy making it. And have a excellent week. It's going to be a nice spring week here, so stay sweaty with your comics and check out your local comic shop. Don't go to Amazon. Have a good week.